Hi, and welcome to another episode of eCommerce One. And today's guest is Gavin Jocius, the experienced e-commerce professional and founder of Riverwise Ventures, an independent investment firm, all the way from Durham in North Carolina. How are you doing, Gavin?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day here. I'm very excited to be part of the show and thank me on.
Well, thank you so much for giving us your time. Looking forward to getting stuck in. So, how did you get into investing? I think it would be great to how you got from into the e-commerce side of things and how that journey looked. And obviously now you're very much in investing. How did you get into investing?
Yeah, so I ran an e-commerce company for about 8.5 years. We sold Walmart. It was great big canvas on demand. And we actually sold the business in October 2019. I stayed on during the transition and then sort of exited out after a smooth transition.
Yeah.
Was also doing my executive MBA at the time. And I knew that I wanted to get into the search fund world, which basically, so Riverwise is twofold. First and foremost, it's a search fund, which means that we're looking for e-commerce businesses to acquire and run. And then we also have a smaller sort of venture capital side where we invest in sort of disruptive technology that uses e-com best practices to grow.
Yeah.
So it was just a fortunate situation of, I had equity in the business and we had a nice exit and it gave me an opportunity to do a self-funded search fund.
Yeah. Okay. So you've worked with quite a lot of e-commerce stores then to date and seen a lot of different things. I think a lot of people listening to the podcast, they'll be in one or two positions probably where they're maybe thinking about getting investment, and how that looks and what sort of, what are the options? If somebody sat there, they may be doing. I know we've got different currencies here, and I think a lot of our listeners are UK, but of course we've got listeners all the way around the world. But somebody that's maybe doing that sort of 10 million turnover mark and is looking at I guess two things really. Some that are looking to get investment, but also potentially to invest in other products, e-com stores, other disruptive tech like yourself. What sort of advice where do you think is a good place to start with that?
Well, I think any sort of e-commerce marketing, regardless of what geographic location you're in, I'm a big proponent of starting with the math and the math first.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're selling books. It doesn't matter if you're selling art. It is the fundamentals of traffic, conversion rate. And I really look for smart e-commerce marketers that really have almost like a stats and a math background.
Yeah.
Sort of sit down and formulate your sort of multi-channel marketing strategy that's built on your cost per click, your cost per conversion, and the fact that you can adjust and modify that in real time. For instance, at my last job, our Google AdWords annual budget was like 13.5 million. And there's a lot riding on those channels, but we gave a lot of assurances everybody involved that we were fiscally responsible in how we manage that ad spend. So whether you're running a business, whether you're a startup, or even trying to get funding, if you're in the e-commerce space, you need to be able to speak intelligently to your multi-channel advertising model. There's chick behind it, and you also sort of understand the nuance of how paid search influence is organic, how social influence is organic, and sort of the assisted conversion funnel. I think is absolutely critical to anybody in e-commerce.
Yeah, I think it comes back to, I think, almost like business basics, but business basics in the new world, if you like. Not that it's new anymore, but if you're running an e-com store, you need to know your numbers, don't you? More than ever. If you're paying for, in that case, 13 million pounds worth of traffic, you can lose your shirt very easily, or you can do very well. Depending on if you know what the right levers are. So when you're looking at investing in firms, then what are you particularly looking for them within that data or within that sort of sphere?
Yeah, so I'll start with sort of the VC side of it. So from the VC side, we're looking for any sort of proprietary technology and sort of proprietary technology that disrupts large industries. So one of the companies that we started with is called Local Line, and they are a SaaS platform for farmers and farmers markets. They actually did very have done very well with COVID, as farmers markets have transitioned online.
Yeah.
And now there's a lot of people in that space, but they've done a lot of very sort of smart features to sort of differentiate themselves and provide young, technology savvy farmers with the tools that they're looking for. So, and that's a massive market, both domestically and international.
Yeah.
And then also a key thing is a smart founder who really, believes in the product, can mobilize the troops, can sort of adjust and pivot, but also can, raise money. So we look for that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fascinating. I think there's so many, these sort of, obviously COVID, obviously terrible, but in terms of like e-commerce and the opportunity with, that example you gave of the sort of the farmers market tech, which was probably, oh no, I'm not gonna, I don't think we'll bother with that potentially. And then now it's like, it's like front and center, it's everything. We see that a lot, with sort of the click and collect side of things in restaurants. And yeah, so
well, there's very much a K recovery that we're seeing, is that unfortunately, you have hospitality restaurants on the lower end of the K, and then on the upper side growth is digital native e-com businesses that are just having a banner year as more of the traffic is obviously switched to e-com. And then on the flip side, like when I'm looking at other e-commerce businesses, sort of smaller ones, do they have a level of protection? Are they selling a product very easy for someone to knock off?
yeah,
What you typically see a lot of times with e-commerce startups around products is they get a lot of traction on social media, and then all the competitors take notice. And then, a month later,
yeah,
you have, someone selling the exact same product and they're undercutting you on Amazon. So
yeah,
do you have a proprietary product that you can
yeah,
protect is very important.
yeah. I think that's a good one. I think that's for the guys that are listening in, it's all right. Going off to wherever it may be, China, etc., and finding these products, but how you're going to protect that and maintain that margin is always key, isn't it? Or is it just a case of, right, another 6 months, we've got to find something else, another 6 months, we've got to find something else, and how you can potentially use branding and IP, etc.
Well, what I've been most amazed with, like, having been in this for about 19 years, is honestly, like, within the last, I want to say like 3 to 5, the level of copycats and how quickly they can, replicate that product, whether or not you're selling, name something that's popular on Instagram. And the minute you put, the Facebook tracking pixel on your website to monitor conversions, all that data is being sent to new competitors that are targeting your customers.
Yeah, there's just like a click of the button and they've got your data, and they've fired off a sample to somebody else, and next thing you know, they've got a better looking SKU potentially straight away. Yeah. It brings back memories of I was very much in the importing and selling in ecom, and I sold my agency, my ecom businesses sort of 12 years ago, and it was it took some doing, to be fair. We found a SKU. We did digital photo frames for about 2 years, about 12, no, it's probably 10 years ago. No, 12 years ago actually. And the margin was crazy, absolutely crazy. We'd pay, I don't know, that's probably $40 and then sell it for the equivalent of about $300 in some instances. That was the extreme examples. And then it was like 250, 200, 150, break even. It's like, okay. Yeah.
And it's a real challenge because the cost per click will always naturally go up. Yeah. That's basically, a fundamental law of physics, basically.
Yeah.
And then with more competitors, they're going to have price compression. So you're fighting this sort of two-front war to protect your margins. On the front end, the cost per click is going, and come in, they're going to drive down your price, and that's going to erode margins.
Yeah.
So it's something to be very mindful of. And, those are conversations that if you're looking to raise money, investors are going to have those questions. So you better have a good answer.
Yeah, great. So I think the guys that are listening in, what advice would you give them around expanding internationally? So, quite often, I think most e-commerce stores start at a, maybe servicing their country that they're based in. And then it's like, how can we do, start adding other countries into that mix?
I think there's a number of ways to sort of slice that. So if you're selling, products and SKUs, obviously the most obvious one is, taxes, tariffs, and duties. Hire a professional to really just sort of give you a sense as to like that side of it, which can
Yeah.
be a complete hornet's nest. And you don't want to find a situation where you've expanded international and you run into tax problems. So that's an obvious one, but it's worth repeating. I was in charge of all the marketing for lulu.com, which is, self-publishing book platform.
Yeah.
So we operated in, 5 languages, 8 international markets, 5 currencies. But that took a while to get to that point. So my advice is pick one international location that you have some level of expertise in, and expand, hit your KPIs in that market before you stretch yourself too thin by trying to launch in like 5 different markets at once.
Yeah.
The other thing from an econ standpoint that I think is incredibly important is what's your keyword strategy and your AdWords campaigns in those countries. So you guys deal with it every day if you're advising clients on paid search. But what does the cost per click in Canada look like in
Yeah.
Australia versus the United States on your terms?
Yeah.
So when we expanded our art business into Canada and Australia,
Yeah.
we found a local manufacturer to manufacture the product, but we also registered our trademarks in those countries.
Yeah. Smart.
So that we had a level of protection as I start advertising, canvas prints in Canada, and my competitor starts bidding on that term and potentially violating, Google's advertising policies. I have that protection. So, summarize there, it's, obviously taxes, tariffs, and duties. Find a local partner that's good. Don't buy off more than you can chew.
Yeah.
Register your trademark in those countries.
And make one of those territories work first. I think that's a great one, because well, yeah, we'll go into these 5 countries and there's 5 times everything they're doing, but is it 5 times the pain before you've even found the success with one? And quite often I think that can be the case. Let's do Google Shopping in every European country. Okay, hang on a minute. We didn't take into account that XYZ, regroup. In the meantime, we've lost 100 grand or whatever it may be. So I think, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you said Z too, because that's another thing is us Americans tend to be, I'm actually an American-Canadian, so I have 2 passports, so I'll preface it with that. It's just like little things like American English versus the Queen's English.
Yeah.
And like, you got to spell color differently.
Yeah. That's actually, Well, I was looking at a client site actually yesterday with one of our account managers, and that was something we spotted, that it had been spelled. It's a UK site, but it was spelled in the US way. We're like, they must have a US copywriter doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last thing too is the obvious ones with GDPR and also just rules and legislation around consumer data. I mean, even if you're in the U.S., you should be GDPR compliant, because there's probably European Union citizens on your website anyways. But it's not something to take lightly at all.
So I guess we've covered a little bit of it, but when a company is looking at sort of a global, G-local or local strategy to expand internationally, how does a company know which one to choose? Are they looking at, what would you say about that?
I would honestly take a math approach first and take a look at the market that you operate in. So if you're in the United States, how big is that market and what's your market share? Because I think people tend to get starry-eyed about like, all right, we need to go international. But if you only have like a 3% market share in like a multi-billion-dollar market in the United States, like you haven't even scratched the surface. The way that I've looked at it is, all right, if we're getting solid growth in the United States, and if we're tackling this large market and our market share is, below 5%, we have a lot of runway ahead of us.
Yeah.
You really should be looking international when you've exhausted sort of all of your options domestically and you're sort of in need of growth. Because you think about it objectively, you probably are well better positioned to go after market share in a country that that you already have the infrastructure set up, that going in and trying to chase growth in a country that you're going to be potentially behind the ball.
So how would the listeners try and find out what the potential size of a market is? I think, or total available market. I think TAM is a term that's used quite a lot here. in the UK. Somebody's like they're in the UK now and they're looking, they're doing very well, but they want to see what the opportunities like, in the US or certain states in the US maybe, or or Canada, whatever it may be. What would be the sort of actual things that people could do to try and figure that out? What would be a start point there potentially?
Yeah, when I've been building sort of go-to-market strategies for our board of directors to approve and to sort of quantify the total addressable market and the growth drivers, I found IBIS World to be a great source. Now, I hate giving out extra business, but it's good. I mean, the subscription, I want to say, don't quote me on this, but it's a couple grand a year. But it is great for reports to say, okay, what is a total addressable market? What are the growth drivers? What does the 5-year outlook look like?
Yeah.
And it's, a good objective source that's, reliable consumer data that you can sort of, bet on.
Yeah.
As you sort of build that case to sort of, quantify the market opportunity that you're going after.
Yeah. So the data is that sort of professional services and subscriptions that you can sign up for that'll give you that data, that heavy lifting sort of thing. Yeah.
And then too, I mean, if you're in the e-commerce space, I mean, take a look at what does the keyword universe look like in the, type of business and products that you're selling in those countries. I use SpyFu, I use Ahrefs. I got to imagine, agencies like you guys that can basically say, all right, here's your keyword universe, and this is what it's going to look like.
Yep.
And then also, how many people are searching on your existing keywords in those countries.
Yeah.
And then simple things like log into, Facebook and start building out some campaigns in that country to sort of see, how many people are there that sort of fit your core demographic, so that you can start to make informed decisions on the type of sort of variable ad spend that you're going to need to sort of hit critical mass in those countries.
So coming back to some sort of old school spying, and you say SpyFu, that's been around for a long time, has it? And Ahrefs, I mean, that's our go-to tool in the agency, really. Ahrefs for many things, but Facebook Ads Library is probably another one as well. You can see if people selling your product in a different country have been running ads for the last 3 years, you'll see it in the Facebook Ads Library, or some of it. If an ad's been running for 6 months, it's either, it's usually profitable, or somebody's not doing a very good job if it's been running for 9 months. But a lot of opportunities there. So that all said, you've done your research into a new country or new territory, new area, and then unfortunately, things don't always go to plan, as we know, and we hit various, whether it's regulatory things that we might have missed or whatnot. But obviously, you will have seen a lot of different things that your clients and people you work with will have come across. But what are some of the specific challenges, that you've encountered and you've overcome over the years you've been doing it?
Yeah, I got a great story I'd like to share, and it's about cultural nuances that you deal with. So, November 11th is Armistice Day. It's the anniversary of the First World War. In Canada, the same as the UK, I mean, we wear poppies. We have a moment of silence, like, Remembrance Day is very somber. You remember, fallen soldiers.
Yeah.
Not to say we don't have that same thing in the United States, but on Veterans Day, it's a day to shop. So we have Veterans Day sales. And so, I the hard way, do not run a Veterans Day sale in Canada on November 11th. I mean, it just backfired like no one's business. In the States, it was awesome. But it's that cultural difference. And like, don't get me wrong. I mean, in all countries, we respect, we remember, the amazing service that, veterans have done. But it's just this mindset of, we expect sales on those days in the United States. And then the other thing is November 11th in China is Singles Day. It's the largest shopping day in the world. It like eclipsed Cyber Monday by like 4x.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good sort of like story about how a single day can have profoundly different sort of cultural, implications across the world.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder of like, you need to know those nuances when you go into a country, when you market, when you try to target customers there, because something that you may think is completely harmless could have a terrible backlash on your brand identity if you come marching in there as,
Yeah.
you know.
I think that's
So,
it. You've got to do your homework, haven't you? You've got to, it's that localized, you know, the different countries have got different things they celebrate, and obviously celebrate it in a very different way. So it's understanding that, you know, and doing that research. Yeah, absolutely. I can see that. Yeah. But yeah, because I'm obviously we both got Black Friday, but you know, I think 10 years ago it wasn't much of a thing here, whereas now it's just flipping madness. Yeah, it's great. It's great.
well, and it's the same as in Canada. I think you guys have Boxing Day too, right?
Yeah, after Christmas Day. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So like we have Boxing Day sales that we
Yeah.
target to our Canadian customers. And then in the States, it's just, you know, I'm just recovering from Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, Boxing Day is when the sales start, but then every year now they start in November pretty much now. So, you know, it's like Boxing Day sales, then it was, you know, and then it's Black Friday is the big one really now. But then between Christmas and New Year, I think is a big sort of go to the shops type time where a lot of the actual stores have big sales, and obviously e-com it just gets earlier and earlier every year. But yeah, Boxing Day sales is the big thing on the TV here. You know, for a lot of the sort of bigger house products like you know, furniture and settees and, you know, furnishings and stuff like that's a big thing on the telly. And holidays is a massive thing because obviously the New Year's come in. Everyone's been sat at home for a week and thinking about their holiday for next year. So it's that those holiday adverts are always the big ones at Christmas as well. Yeah. So okay, so that localized, that understanding. You know, if you're trying to put products into China, you know, there's going to be a lot of things you just will not know unless you do your work. So like anything running a business, you know, there's time you've got to spend learning and understanding, and, you know, obviously probably speaking to people that are doing it is probably, I find, you know, that's something that I'm big on, investing in mentors or people that have done that, and, you know, people that are already, you know, selling into China, America, Canada, UK, whatever the country that you're, you know. Is there a sort of how would you say people could go about sort of getting maybe an advisor or somebody to help them with that process?
I think it depends on the size of the business. I mean, a lot of these sort of smaller, sort of micro e-commerce companies that I've seen for sale that are like in the, you know, $1 million to like 3 million in annual revenue, have been working a lot with digital assistants, you know, both to sort of handle their e-commerce, but
so freelance, like a freelancer,
freelance. Yeah, like Upwork. I mean, you know, I even had a stats professor in business school that had like an Upwork, you know, statistician PhD student that spoke fluent English in the Philippines that was basically helping out. So I think the sort of gig economy of you can find incredibly talented people in just about any geographic location to not only help you sort of prove or disprove hypotheses that you may have about like a market opportunity, but like with your customer service, with your social media posting. And, you know, you can vet them like anything. And like Uber drivers, they'll have star ratings to see who's good and who isn't. But, you know, my sort of thesis on e-commerce going forward, more so than ever, is that you can have an almost entirely virtual staff, you know, and hire the best talent. It's just basically like, hey, we're going to have virtual scrum meetings, you know, on Mondays, and my team is basically all over the globe. And, you know, you're having it, you know, potentially fulfilled through Amazon, and, you know, all of your ad spend is being done remote. So I'd encourage folks to, you know, potentially take a look at Upwork and other sort of gig economy freelance solutions that are out there. But then obviously, I mean, if you're a multi-million-dollar, you know, major company, then, you know, seek out folks to potentially hire an agency or to bring in house.
I think the Upwork, that was Odesk, wasn't it? Now Upwork, is that right? Yeah.
So
it was Odesk. And it's something we've used probably 500 times as an agency, but back, you know, more so previously. We do use it still. So I would very much, you know, recommend that as well. You know, getting those, like you say, if you can get people that are, you know, some of the talent you can get on there. I know I'm trying to think some of the projects that we've worked on over the years, but we've definitely used it for research ourselves, not for international sort of research, but initially in the early days, like competitor research, we split our agency in two, and I think 2.5 years ago, we had somebody on there looking at e-commerce agencies specifically, what, strengths, weaknesses, SWOT analysis, various other things, look at the website strengths. And then when we developed our first site for our second agency, we used some of the information from that. It's amazing, isn't it? Like I say, you've got the star rating, you've got different price brackets, you've got $5 an hour and obviously hundreds of dollars an hour, but there's such a raft of options in there, depending on your sort of budgets and things like that. You can get started very, very cheaply, potentially, and dip your toe in that research phase without spending thousands, potentially. If you're doing $1 million pounds a year, you're not going to want to spend 50 grand to find out that China's not for you. You want to spend, a couple of grand maybe, or a few $100s just to start something and find out. Yeah.
Well, I'm a huge fan of sort of growth hacking to prove or disprove hypotheses that you may have. So let's say, for instance, you're an e-commerce site and you want to expand into Australia. Set up a landing page with information to collect email addresses, and set up a Facebook campaign targeting people in Australia to just say, hey, be on our VIP list to learn more about our product launch. It's going to happen potentially,
Yeah.
And then, just do a lead generation campaign in that location on Facebook to see what's your cost per lead, how many people are interested, and that'll start to sort of give you at least some hints as to what your cost per click is going to be and what the sort of general interest rate is, interest is, and then sort of use and be more firm in these hypotheses that you have for your go-to-market strategy. Because I'm a big fan of like the sure bet. This Malcolm Gladwell article that is, it's less about risk and it's about sort of working towards, collecting as much data that an opportunity becomes a sure bet.
Yeah.
So what are those sort of baby steps that you can almost sort of growth hack your way into, proving or disproving if something's going to be a good idea or not?
Yeah, that's great. I think that's great advice. That's great advice, full stop, with whatever you're trying to do. You're not sort of going all in. You're testing. Oh, hello. That's actually an opportunity, or maybe not. Next one, or just.
I mean, I'd rather potentially quote unquote waste 20 grand or 10 grand on a test marketing campaign than to hire an Australian fixer, go through all the rigmarole of set it and then just have it flounder when you try to launch.
It's a bit like our strategy as an agency with our paid ad accounts, because let's say somebody's we have 100 grand a month to spend. We will allocate a budget there for testing. Slightly different, but and some stuff will naturally fail, but a small amount, it will fly. And then you take 10% and 20% and you reinvest the main budget into the areas of the test campaigns. All this new, smart shopping. Oh, let's have a try. No. Oh, actually, it works. We're not a massive fan of smart shopping, but sometimes it has it has its place. And we've got to test and iterate and change, and we've been testing some stuff recently around playing with setting up a lot of different conversion actions, and almost tricking Google Smart Shopping to think there's a lot more conversions than there actually is. So then it sees a lot, and we've been getting some success with that, but limited. But it's like, oh, actually, we might have something here where if we just do the same old thing and not look outside that existing sort of the routines that we're doing, you're just going to be going after the same traffic in the same areas that everyone's going for. Whereas if we're able to test some things and find, maybe get a 6-month jump on everybody else on the new thing, or and just having that, I think that's a big thing for a lot of entrepreneurs and e-commerce store owners. Typically, they are sort of quite, in a little bit of risk, because they started an e-com store quite often. Quite a lot of our clients, it's like a back bedroom idea, and fast forward 5-10 years, or even 5 months or 2 months, and they're doing 5 million quid a year, 10 million quid a year, whatever it may be. So they're quite open to and they can be quite nimble, and and have that sort of attitude. It's great to see.
Well, the way I would articulate that is you basically need to have a part of your budget set aside for small bets. Like e-commerce changes so fast that you need to have your tried and tested true, channels that are generating your revenue.
Yeah.
But every month, just making these small bets on different, geofencing, just experiments that if they fail quick. But if they start to show a good return, then you ramp up spend, you ramp up spend, you ramp up spend, because you gotta get that 3 to 6 month, head start on your competitors on that new channel. Like I look back on early Facebook ad days when we were really, really early on and just generating an amazing return.
Yeah.
And then the entire world just jumped in and, took notice. So, make small bets, and small bets can turn into big, safe bets if you do it right.
So e-commerce store, what would you say sort of some of the keys for growing? What are some of the key things that you've seen to the sort of the consistent patterns that you see in stores that are doing well and that are wanting to grow further? What are some of the advice you would give?
Yeah, I mean, the first most with any e-commerce business, in my experience, is all variable ad spend. Like that is the key to e-commerce. It's basically your CAC to LTV ratio. It's what, private equity investors look at e-commerce businesses, and what is that ratio and how well do you know it?
Yeah.
And it's, what's a channel that, for every dollar I spend, I get $4, like go nuts. And I tell people that if you have good, sound financial math that supports your variable ad spend, you should not ever have a budget.
Yeah, unlimited.
It should unlimited. It literally should be like if you can put $1 into the machine and get $4 back at high margin, put as much money into that machine as possible. And that's really,
it's every conversation with every client. It's like, so what's your budget? Well, it's unlimited if you can get me a 7 times ROAS. Well, obviously it is. Yeah, figure that out.
But there's that. And then obviously, conversion rate has the greatest impact on the bottom line. So if you look at sort of the holy trinity of e-commerce, it's, traffic, AOV, conversion, if you adjust that slightly, will have the impact. So I tell people, take a look at your Google Analytics funnel. Where are people dropping off? Run experiments, add Optimizely to your website and run multivariant tests, because we've had where we've made slight adjustments to our conversion rate and transform business. People want fast, easy websites. So literally do everything in your power to make it the most frictionless experience. That I told my dev team, I want people to be able to butt dial and order Canvas. Like that's my direction. Like I want it to be so easy for you to check out. But yeah, if you focus on those fundamentals, I think that's really the key to growth.
We'll probably stop now, pause the episode and think, right, okay, yeah, we want to spend more, but what if we could 2x our conversion rate, or even, half a point, I'll take a 2% to a 2.5%. Well, if that's, 100 grand a month, it's down, whatever that is, I can't think, 125 grand a month, rather than, always focusing on the ROAS and always focusing on the ads. Obviously, the ads are a massive part of any e-com store. That that site speed, those tests, that checkout process. Oh, actually, look at the data. Are we finding that actually anybody on an iPhone is actually finding that there's a pop-up coming up from the chatbot in the checkout or whatever it may be? What if you tweak that compounded effect? 3-4 tweaks, 3-4 tests, that a point here, half a point here, taking a 2% to a 3% to a 4%, double a business. It's something we don't talk about too much on the podcast, to be fair. It's a fascinating topic, I think, that where, there's some of those key levers that most people just are so obsessed with over here, and that, that maybe ad spend and SEO, which is absolutely rightly so key things, but those are the levers that just don't get looked at enough, I don't think.
Well, you can take a crappy agency and, have them manage ad spend for an amazingly converted website, and they're going to look like rock stars. I mean, it is, what type of traffic you're sending to the website, but what's the experience when they're there? I mean, one of our websites, we did like $30 million in annual revenue. But when we looked at our abandoned carts, there was like $300 million worth of abandoned carts just sitting there. And we're like, if we improve that by like 1%,
Yeah.
So that's where you kind of really need to put on your data nerd hat
Yeah.
and really see like where are people falling off the conversion funnel.
I mean, that one is absolutely that whole abandoned cart piece. If you're not using an abandoned cart strategy, you're just about to make a lot of money.
Without question. Absolutely without question. And in some cases, it's just little things, just that like small frustrations. It's not less about price and it's less about shipping. And it's just, the convenience factor.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know when we've obviously researched what you do and some of the projects you've worked on, and a little birdie tells me about the project. Well, you mentioned it actually, the Lula. Now I should know.
Yep.
I think it's the same firm. They do the print on demand books. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I actually used them back in this. This was 11 years ago.
Wow. I mean, they say don't judge a book by its cover, but with self-published books, you need to have a good cover. So I'm going to go ahead and say
11 years ago. Yes, 11 years ago. Come on. Yeah, but I know you've obviously worked. That was a very sizable campaign and company, and I know specifically you worked on their email marketing campaigns and increased, the sales from that by about 51%. I think the numbers are. What was it? Can you talk us around that and the sort of things that you did there?
So a general theme that you'll get from me is I'm a fundamentalist. So when it comes to e-commerce, like a conversion rate, AOV, variable ad spend, and then with email, it's all about deliverability. So that increase literally was taking a look at our deliverability rates with our current email provider, and then migrating to a new provider, putting them on a dedicated IP, and really working towards having a very, very clean sender score for the IPs that we were sending from. So long and short of it is like we had developed this terrible reputation with our incumbent, email provider, and that became obvious. And my advice to anyone in email marketing is it's about inbox delivery. Yeah. You can have beautiful email creative, but if it's in the junk folder, no one's going to see it.
Yeah.
So in the same way, I would encourage somebody from a marketing standpoint to hire a statistician or a data person to help them build the math behind their advertising campaigns. Hire a deliverability nerd as, your email marketing professional, or just really put a ton of pressure on whoever your email provider is, that you're on a dedicated IP, that it's been warmed up, that they keep they look at abuse rates, because, spam filtering is just getting smarter and smarter and smarter.
Yeah.
And, it's just going to be a cat and mouse game of making sure that you hit the inbox.
So you're listening to the podcast, and how many of you honestly have been checking your deliverability rates? It's all right checking your click-through rates and open rates, but the reality is if you're sending 50,000 emails or whatever that number is, but they're not even getting there, or they're not, you're just banging your head against the wall, really, just sending to the same dead end in effect. So I think that's a great bit of advice. The
other thing, it's like the abuse rates by different ISPs, and even back when before Gmail had like the priority folder, we would do tricky things, and this is not spamming because this is opt-in, where we would send our most engaged, highest open people first, and the people later, because Gmail's spam filtering used a lot of signals to determine whether or not that would go in the junk folder or not.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of just, clever thing.
So by getting a lot of opens with your first email will encourage the second set of emails to be open or to get through, in effect. Yeah.
Yeah, like you don't want to send the people that never open your emails first, because Gmail basically says, okay, someone doesn't want to open this, so I'm going to infer that this is essentially spam.
Yeah.
Emails are a real tricky mistress that way, in that, it is this constant way of, making sure that you're getting people the messages that they, they want to receive in the inbox.
I think a lot of e-commerce stores, I think, with their email strategy. You know, they spend so much time on the look and feel. You know, it's just this big design piece. Yeah, you know, and then it's sort of overshadowed, or just a too big a bloody email to get through. That, you know, they haven't sort of thought of that technical piece. Oh yeah, it looks great. There's like 27 images in there that's not even a product shot or whatever it may be. Yeah, I see that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I tell people when you're doing HTML, when you're doing email, code like it's 1998. Basic HTML, not a lot of excessive code, not a lot of heavy load.
Yeah.
You know, be smart about the absolute URLs that you have in there. Be mindful of the language and the terms that you're using.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes simpler is better, to be honest.
Great. Okay, so quick fire round. We've got a couple of questions to go. There's been some fantastic takeaways so far. Thank you. So social media, what advice would you give to e-commerce stores trying to really cut above that sort of noise out there? A lot of it, obviously, so much going on social media, that attention span. You know, what sort of advice would you give to e-com brands trying to get out there?
Well, you said noise, and there's a lot of noise on social. And when you're dealing with a noisy room, be the loudest talker.
Okay.
I'm actually going to give you a sort of different advice in the sense that where we've done very well on social is when we spend a lot. Now, you have to make sure that the ROAS works, but basically, if you have good creative that resonates with people, and if you're getting a good response rate, and if your math holds, spend.
Yeah.
So like Cyber Monday, we had some campaigns that were just doing incredibly well, and we sort of elevated above the noise by being the noisiest person in our particular field to make sure that we sort of hit our target market.
Fantastic. Okay, so lifetime value, you have touched on this. Obviously, it's a huge thing. I think people that are running a business, all about getting that sale, but what else? It's not just about getting that one sale, is it? That's the reality, and that's where I think a lot of people miss. What sort of advice would you give to e-com stores trying to improve that lifetime value?
So lifetime value is not going to be the same for every segment. So I'd say start by doing a decile analysis of your whole customer base. So decile is 10, and basically you want to break your whole customer list into the 10 deciles. Number one being your best, the highest LTV, customers available. Deciles 2 through like 5 are sort of that mid range. And then you're going to have deciles like 8, 9, and 10. These are just people that came in once, low lifetime value. They may never come back again. And so what I like to do is slice and dice those deciles and to sort of figure out what the LTV is for them. So decile like 2, for instance, could be, okay, we can get them up to number 1, but it's going to require some upsells. And I think that each one of those different segments are going to not only have a different LTV, they're going to have different motivators. They're going to be, more inclined to upsells that you can sort of increase that lifetime value.
Yeah.
But it's a math exercise. I sound like a broken record, but that's what it sort of boils down to.
I think it's good. I think that's great, because at the end of the day, it is about maths, isn't it? I think, all businesses in a way, you've got to know your numbers. You've got to know what's working, what's not working, rather than just find out too late that it's not working. I think,
well, and same thing too, is like deciles 8 through 10. If they're on your email list and they're never opening, that's wasted money, and that's bad signals that you're sending to the spam filters.
Yeah.
Like we had some people in those lower deciles that we'd send them 100 emails a year and they'd never open. It's terrible for Gmail spam filtering.
Yeah.
So we would do a makeup or breakup email and say, hey, this is your last shot.
Yeah.
And, kick them to the curb.
So that would be sort of click here to stay on the list, or bye-bye sort of thing. Yeah.
Or bye-bye, because it's just basically a lot of it's dead weight. And I hate turning away customers. It seems like counter, but you're going to just have some folks that, they're gone and they're not coming back. So why incur the cost, financially, but also your reputation as a sender is going to be impacted.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, Gavin, it's been an absolute pleasure. We've absolutely rattled through that. It feels like we've been on here about 10 minutes, but we are there. There's some great takeaways there. Thank you so much. Now, we always like to end every episode with a book recommendation. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be e-com. It can be whatever you would like it to be. What's your sort of go-to recommendation?
Do I just get one? Because I've been hammering through books recently.
We're not that strict, so
Okay.
you go for it.
All right. Yeah. Just because I wrapped up my MBA and I got a lot of more free time to read for pleasure now. But I'd say from a business standpoint, some of my favorites are Contagious: Why Things Catch On with Jonah Berger.
Yeah.
It's a little bit older at this point, but he's a professor of marketing at Wharton. And it's just a phenomenal book on just research on how ideas and concepts go viral.
Yeah.
Scott Galloway's The Four. The hidden DNA of Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google. It's quite critical of all of them. But if you're sort of a nerd when it comes to the DOJ and a lot of these antitrust lawsuits that are hitting right now, it's sort of a fascinating look at sort of the monopolistic practices. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that with Amazon and AWS, particularly now. So that I find is fascinating. And then on a personal read, I'm a big sci-fi nerd, and I just finished The Three Body Problem.
Oh.
It's a Chinese author. It's mind-boggling. Netflix just gave the showrunners for Game of Thrones $1 billion to turn this sci-fi masterpiece into a Netflix series, and it is mind-expanding, incredible. If you like physics, you like hard sci-fi, it's
Oh, wow.
it's dense.
Yeah, that's
but
going to be a popular one, I
well
think.
worth it.
A lot of our team are sci-fi nuts, so that'll be ordered, and probably 3 or 4 of those will be getting ordered in about 5 minutes' time.
Well, I did my research too, and one of the things I liked about your agency is that you guys are big on originality and geekiness. So I anytime you want to geek out, this is the Three Body Problem trilogy.
Yeah.
is for total nerds, and you'll love it.
Yeah, we got plenty of them. Well, it's been an absolute blast, Gavin. Now, for the guys that are listening that would like to find out more about yourself, what's the best place to do that and to reach out to you?
Yeah, I'd say on the sort of VC side of things, riverwise.net is our website. And, get in contact with me on LinkedIn if you want to, bounce off ideas. I'm always open there. And then actually run a podcast myself, wisdom.mba. It's on Apple, and interview business leaders and talk about a whole host of different things. But this has been an absolute pleasure. And love the well-researched podcast and the great conversation.
Thanks, Gavin.